Machiko Noguchi carries a rare trait within the alien universe, being one of very few human beings to fight alongside a Yautja and become blooded in the eyes of the predators. A human being that moved beyond even being seen as a worthy trophy, but as, in some ways, an equal. In the extended universe, Machiko is often in the middle of all-out wars between the two deadly alien species, even equipping the Yautja's sacred technology in her role within the Hunters. She carries the blooded symbol on her forehead. This is a significant mark taken on only by Yautja who have slain the ultimate prey, the xenomorph. Machiko, though going on to become a significant figure in the universe, came from humble enough beginnings as supervisor of the Ryushi ranching colony. This was a duty taken on as a personal challenge and an opportunity to restore honor to her family name. Circumstance would ultimately pit Noguchi in the middle of a Yautja rite of passage gone terribly awry, fighting alongside the hunter species in a last stand to save the colony. Fighting off the rapidly growing infestation and the xenomorph queen controlling her army, Machiko would earn her blooded status as a hunter. As a blooded hunter, honorary Yautja, and skilled warrior in her own rights, Machiko was driven by a sense of honor, not unlike the Yautja, and accepted the challenges that came with this pursuit. She had hoped to attain this honor through her work at the colony, climbing the company ladder, not expecting the unimaginable challenge that found 3 species in a brutal, costly war to come. Aliens vs. Predator Prey, the first comic book crossover of the Aliens and Predators, and also Machiko Noguchi's first appearance, depicts her origins on Ryushi. The colony, Prosperity Wells, was in preparations for its harvest, with Machiko overseeing the operations. When the opportunity had presented itself, she had not hesitated. Only 29 years old and already offered an overseer's post for the Chikusa Corporation. Prosperity Wells, at the far edge of the Beta Cygni system, very quiet. Sounds exhilarating, she had said. Rinth, a species grown and reared for their meat, was the main export of Prosperity Wells. The novelization of Prey describes the species. The Rinth themselves seemed to be unlikely meat animals. They looked to Noguchi much like a beast she had seen in a zoo as a child, a rhinoceros. The Rinth were slightly bigger than her memory of the gray-brown terrain creature, and they had a mottled purple and ochre skin. They walked on stumpy, oddly jointed legs that ended in nailed pads, and they had a hooked, beak-like mouth above, which were a pair of inline horns. Ugly brutes, no brighter than cattle, but very tasty when cooked properly. Though not the most eminent position, this was a duty that Noguchi took very seriously, a stepping stone to greater opportunities, she thought. Though the adjustment to life on the colony was taking some getting used to. Her meticulous focus on her work and her drive for perfection was isolating her. The ranchers, cowboys, or Rinth boys, as they'd sometimes be called, didn't seem to like her very much, but they would respect her. Her honor would accept nothing less. The corporation employees' living quarters were all in the same building as the offices and mess hall, along with the community center and central operations. Narrow passageways connected this building to the equipment storage and main garage. To the east and south was open range, the north, mountains, and west was Iowa Gorge, a canyon too deep and long to herd the Rinth, although it certainly kept them wandering too far in that direction. One less fence to build. She had, of course, spent time learning the layout of the complex when she'd first arrived. It was an efficient setup. A med center with helipad, there were quarantine and holding pens for the Rinth, a transmitter, communications control shack, and a school connected to a rec center. There was also a fairly decent, if very small, shopping mall, complete with 2 tiny restaurants and a bar. Not that any of these got much use. Only company people lived in the Wells, although most of the ranchers were in walking distance if you didn't mind a long, hot hike. Still, the company had made a token effort to make it look like home. Home had become a distant, foreign concept to Machiko since a past tragedy from her childhood haunted her, serving as a constant reminder of her need for honor. Wherever she went in the universe, the dream found a way to follow her. Her first night on Ryushi, the dream found her, and began its regular appearances once more. Always the same dream, except she had not had it for a long time. She had been covered in her father's blood when her mother had found her. There had been no note, only the death poem that her mother would not let her read until years later, but the reason had come to light, and that same night, the esteemed Akira Noguchi, an accountant for the Yoshido Company, had been fired for embezzlement. The same man who had scolded her when she had lied about stealing a piece of candy at the age of 5. The man who had taught her the value of order. The father who had taught her honor. bastard," she murmured, angry, except her voice didn't sound angry at all. The memories came back so easily when she let them, and now she was helpless to stop them. The stain on her family's name had eventually faded, and when she was in college, her mother had remarried. She had met her stepfather only once. He seemed like a pleasant man, but she never got past the feeling that her mother had married him, only that she would no longer be a Noguchi. She and her mother spoke occasionally, but any closeness they had once shared was gone. Kiko Noguchi Yuta had never understood how her daughter had really felt. When she had called her mother with news of her move to Ryushi, her mother had been so proud. "Your father would have been pleased," she had said. Her father. Noguchi took a deep breath and closed her eyes. None of that mattered anymore. She did not need to think about it. She was a corporate overseer for a major corporation on a planet far from Earth, and she was good at her job. She would become better in time. She would earn the rancher's trust and would carry out her position with honor, she whispered. And try as she might, she could not hold back the single tear that coursed down her cheek. 6 months had passed. Her relationship with the ranchers and staff at Prosperity Wells had not improved. In fact, most of the colony still looked to the previous holder of Machiko's position, Hiroki Shimura, for final say in operations. This was a problem Machiko sought to correct, though she was not exactly sure how. She reached out to Hiroki with an olive branch, seeking his opinion on the matter. "The ranchers, even the staff, treat me like a stranger," she told him. "I've done all I can think of to make this job mine." "Maybe that is your problem," Hiroki replied. "You're trying to adapt the job to you, rather than adapting yourself to it. You can't run an operation like this and hide from it at the same time, no matter how nice the office." Noguchi nodded slightly, thoughtful. This sounded like something he had been waiting to say until asked, which made her wonder how long he had been holding his tongue. Still, she needed an informed opinion. The ranchers respected Shimura. No, even further, they trusted him. She had not thought to find out how he had achieved their loyalty. "There are only 113 civilians on Ryushi," he continued. "And besides the 30 or so company staff, we are dealing with freelancers here. Not men and women who jump when the voice of the corporation speaks. They are not drones looking for advancement. They are people with children and homes. Quoting regulations won't get you very far." Noguchi felt a flash of anger, but she thought to keep it under control. "What would you suggest, Hiroki? That I bake them cookies and invite them on picnics?" "I suggest that when you ask for an opinion, you should consider the advice you receive." Hiroki picked up his sun helmet from the synth marble table and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the entry controls and looked back at her. "Look, I'll be around for another 2 weeks, and then you're on your own. I will do what I can to help in the meantime." He smiled a little. "I think you'll do fine, Machiko." She stood and nodded at him. "Thank you for your assistance, Hiroki." "It is nothing. Get out of the office once in a while. Get your hands dirty." He opened the door and then grinned easily. "Get some rinth shit between your toes." Noguchi sat back and rested her hands lightly on the black lacquered surface of her desk. Hiroki's words had stung a bit, but perhaps because there was some truth there. It deserved consideration. Hiroki was, after all, being promoted off of Ryushi. The ones who went up the ladder were generally not those who kept a low profile, as she had been doing. It was then one of the scan watchers, a low-level company worker by the name of Mason, reported an unusual occurrence. An unidentified flying object making its way into Ryushi's atmosphere. "It's probably just a meteor," Mason reported, "but it's not breaking up. It is going to hit, if it stays on its present course. It'll make a planetfall about 30 clicks north of here, open pasture. Make a boom when it lands." Machiko's first instinct, after insisting to hear the report directly when Mason requested to speak to Hiroki, was to assess the potential damage, which turned out to be a non-issue. The UFO was small enough so that, if it did hit, it would not cause any serious damage to the colony. This made it low priority for Machiko, though she began making arrangements to investigate any crash after the Rinth roundup. Her focus returned to the problem at hand, and Machiko meditated on Hiroki's advice. "Perhaps it's time to make some of my own moves." Noguchi took another cigarette from the small silver case in her desk drawer and rolled it thoughtfully between her thumb and forefinger. What was the saying? The journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with one step. Little did Machiko know that her journey was already well underway. The object approaching Ryushi was, of course, not a meteorite, but an advanced space vessel equipped with technology beyond man's wildest dreams. It carried a race of alien hunters and dangerous prey. It carried Machiko Noguchi's destiny, and when it came crashing down to the surface, nothing would ever be the same. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, and you can also subscribe for all the latest videos from Alien Theory. A very, very special thanks goes out to WEYLAND YUTANI executives EmYarUk and Lady Anne, part of the Patreon Hive. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for exclusive posts and contests. In the meantime, you can catch up with Alien Theory over social media. Follow @alien_theory on Twitter and @alientheoryyt on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.